So if I think that my English got worse because I'm learning Chinese right now, does that mean that because I don't learn English well enough to get my own blocks, and then is it better to learn like English first and then learn Chinese later, or?
No, if you feel that your English has regressed a bit because you're learning Chinese, you also got to remember you've only got so much brain power. And I look at this. This is again where I equate it with sports. You know, over the course of a day, you use the same energy to live one day that you use to run a triathlon. But Jeremy, how long did it take you to run a triathlon?
2 hours and 50 minutes. 2 hours, 50 minutes.
So he took the energy of a whole day and concentrated it into 2 hours and 15 minutes. He used up his energy reserves. Could you, after you got out of the triathlon, the final event, you got off the bicycle, and then what, you went and taught for 6 hours? And then sat in class?
I went and drank for 8.
So in very unscientific terms, you only have so much ability or so much brain power, right? And you're using some of it for Chinese right now. And actually, because you're learning Chinese, it's actually it's using more of your memory space, you know. And it's kind of taking away from your English. But don't worry, you didn't lose the English. It's just hiding. Seriously, it'll come back. And where I study translation, we have to study 2 languages at the same time. So my language combination is German and Spanish and English. And yeah, and that's just normal at translator school. And there's actually a lot of advantages learning 2 languages at the same time. There's a lot of things that happen in your brain where it could actually be advantageous, and particularly if you're not planning to speak the 3rd language, but by learning that 3rd language, it actually gives a lot of benefit to the 2nd language. And for people that are going to be doing like intelligence work, you for example, you would learn Chinese through an English medium, and then when you went somewhere and you were speaking Chinese, they wouldn't be able to tell from your accent, because your accent would be all garbled. When you're speaking Chinese, your Chinese accent wouldn't necessarily be Indonesian because you learned it through like an English medium. If you learn 2 languages at the same time, or you learn one through a different medium, for example, Chinese here I think is only taught through an English medium, right? English or Chinese, but they don't have like a class where Indonesians go and they're learning Chinese and they have an Indonesian textbook, right? Everybody's using the same textbook, which is in English. So what'll happen is Indonesians, Japanese, Koreans, they're going to learn Chinese through this like English medium, this English filter. And their accent when they speak Chinese won't necessarily be a typical Japanese or Korean accent. It's not going to be a typical American accent, but it's going to be heavily influenced by American accent. And so they could pass themselves off as something else.
What you said about the 2 boxes,
yeah.
Right? Now I effectively had that at one time in my life,
Yep.
English and French. I haven't really used French in any meaningful way for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Like I'll have a conversation with Jeremy, and I'm struggling to keep up.
Yep.
Do I still have those 2
Yep.
boxes? And it's just a matter of...
When you have those conversations with Jeremy and you're struggling to keep up, do Chinese words come out of your mouth?
No.
Yeah. There's your answer. There's your answer. There's your answer. Yeah, you're struggling to keep up because your French is rusty. You have to exercise it. You got to bring it back out. But it's not. Your Chinese isn't infiltrating it. You're not getting confused. You know. Yeah, it's still there. And the one thing you'll never ever lose is your pronunciation.
Right.
You'll have the same pronunciation for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I have people tell. I'll talk to someone in French and they'll say, "Oh, your accent is really good," and they seem to assume I know how to say more than I'm capable of saying because I've got the accent. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got that same problem.
Yeah.
Not with French.
With Chinese.
Yeah. Actually, I learned Chinese before I learned to speak any other language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I can't speak Chinese anymore. But the few words I still do know, I apparently speak very well.
Yeah. I've heard you speak Chinese, and I mean your pronunciation is like
Right. And
very enviable.
It's the most frustrating thing to have a conversation with someone in Chinese because they immediately assume they can start breaking out the complex vocabulary. Then they assume you're an idiot.
Yeah.
When you can't respond.
Yeah. Exactly.
So would you say Jason and I are actually the equivalent position? It sounds like we've got the
same problem.
Yeah, that's actually, Jason and I are probably very similar, because it would be called a non-strict native speaker, which means you learned it as a child. But for me, you know, like Italian, I only learned it at home. I never went to school in Italy. I never went to an Italian school. You at least went to French school for a few years, right?
Right.
Yeah. Jason, you didn't go to Chinese school at all, right? So you just learned it at home. Yeah, that's called non-strict native speaker. Yeah, but the pronunciation's there, and there's something else about language, and it's really important. We talked about cultural understanding. Like, this is cultural. I understand this is. We all did actually, but the Chinese might not have, only because this is not what a Buddhist temple looks like in China. He doesn't know that that symbol is a Buddhist temple. Last time we did the class, I asked somebody to draw a school, and the Taiwanese girl drew a school, and every one of us said, "Oh yeah, that's a school," because that's the way Taiwanese draw schools. And it's not the way we would necessarily draw a school in other countries. And in Thailand, whenever we ask kids to draw a school, it automatically, they draw a house with a Thai flag in front of it. That means school. Or when I tell tribal kids, when I'm with tribal kids like up in Burma or whatever, and I give them here, draw a picture of a house. It's a house on stilts. Just like a big, like that.
Yeah, and the clock in the middle.
And the clock in the middle. Yep, there you go. Something like that. They always draw that. It's like always the same thing. And Thai kids always draw. It's like pretty much just like a normal house, but there's a Thai flag right here, and then you automatically know it's a school. Yeah. But there's cultural understanding to language, and what happens is, interestingly, for example, you go to Thailand and you study in the Thai program, and you go, Thai language, like 50% of the vocabulary is based on Chinese. So you would think, wow, Chinese people would have this huge advantage. And they don't do particularly well in the program. Filipinos do really well. Khmer people generally do well, and foreigners that have lived in Cambodia or Laos or someplace that do well. And the reason why is David Long, the purveyor of the theory, you know, the new purveyor since Dr. Brown died, since he killed Dr. Brown. His theory is that cultural understanding is actually more important than linguistics.
So you're saying that, well, I want to go to the French shop because study France for at least 2 months, and chances of me learning the language is going to be high.
Yeah, the chances of you, because you've lived in South Africa, you probably have a higher probability of learning French than a Taiwanese that was born here. Or, well, I know you were born here, but I mean that was raised here. Raised here. Yeah, because you've lived in the West for so long, and it's a similar culture. And so, and all of our Southeast Asian friends here would probably find it easier to learn Thai or any other Southeast Asian languages because the cultural similarities. Yeah?
When I studied Chinese in college, my professor always told us to play something in Chinese while you're doing anything else.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in my opinion, since you're focused too much on the other thing that you're doing, does the Chinese background have an effect on your learning?
It's a really good question. The Stephen Krashen talks about something called comprehensible input, and that's a lot of the basis for ALG. And basically what it means is that listening is really important, but you have to listen to things you can understand. And if you're listening to things you don't understand, you tune it out. So yeah, I think that if you're a beginner in Chinese and you just like leave the TV on all the time, I don't think it's going to help you. In fact, it could hurt you, I think, in my opinion, it could hurt you because you condition your brain to tune out every time you hear Chinese.
You're going to tell me to think out the word.
Yeah.
I won't be able to.
Okay. So you've got a Chinese background, and so it might be that having a Chinese background, it's easier to learn Taiwanese.
Shouldn't that make it easier for me to understand, to be able to say the words or something like that? I can't say it.
You didn't practice saying them. How could you say them? You didn't practice saying them.
That's true.
Yeah. Remember that you can't say anything that you can't hear, right? But once we learn to hear them, then we need to start speaking. So the first step is the listening, then we got to learn the speaking. I want to thank everybody for coming out today. Please buy my books. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.